Hello, everyone. My name is Mariam Farag, and I'm very happy to be with you today to talk about the art of communication and when it comes to effectively communicating your product or your campaign to others, whether it's internal stakeholders or external stakeholders. I just wanted to know a quick review or a quick introduction, if you can hear me, perhaps maybe by chatting, I don't know, with the team, if I'm getting to everyone correctly, if everyone is on board.
عقبات يواجهها أشخاص بصمت يأملون التغيير. ساهم معنا في بناء جسور الأمل في شهر الخير بوجه جديد للمساعدات. MBC الأمل ستمنح ريالا سعوديا لكل تغريدة بالخير ترسلونها. شارك معنا في الوصول إلى مليوني تغريدة. غرد بالخير. لمزيد من المعلومات زر موقعنا mbc.net/t2d.
تغريدة واحدة بس ممكن تعمل فرق.
فقررت اروح اعمل تدريب في محطة تلفزيون كبيرة. في الأول ما كنتش متأكدة عشان أنا دارسة تجارة.
So everyone can hear me properly.
أول يوم صفر معرفة. بس عندي إن أنا عايزة أتعلم وعايزة أفهم الدنيا دي شغالة إزاي. عمري في حياتي ما فكرت إن في جيش بيطلع الحاجة دي على الشاشة.
Just to give you a little bit of my background, I have 20 years of experience of a mix of communication, corporate affairs, humanities, non-profit, and so on. And honestly speaking, I believe that communication is key to anything that we try to do, from a small message to a big campaign to a big initiative. Currently, I work for MBC Group, and everything that we do has to be communicated. And nowadays, I do understand that nonprofits or organizations that work in the humanitarian sector are busy doing what they do, which is serving the people on ground. And sometimes we get lost, or the messages get lost in the midst of the on-ground activations and servicing the people, or protecting the refugees, or having to feed the hungry, and so on. Even if you're working on youth or other sectors, to communicate what we do is very important. And I'll tell you, or I will try to tell you throughout the presentation, why communicating what we do is important. Now, communication elements are key. When we want to communicate anything, we have certain factors or certain elements that we need to look at. But first, allow me to go back to the first slide, which is the art of communication is language of leadership. If we want to lead on our sector, we really properly need to effectively communicate our vision, our mission, our messages, our goals, and eventually our call to action. Now, let me take you through our communication elements. You first need to know your why. So why are we doing what we do? If it's a campaign, if it's a project, or if it's actually a mission. So an organization, its why, or the entity needs to know the why, because the why drives everything else. The context. So what are we trying to communicate? Is it a small project? Is it a fundraising campaign? Is it an employee engagement campaign? Is it a big initiative? Is it a TV program? And so on. The third element is to who. So once we know our purpose, and once we know the language that we want, or the message that we want to communicate, we need to understand our target audience. Because without understanding our target audience, we won't be able to effectively reach the right people that we need. So for example, I'll give you just a quick example, but throughout the presentation, I'll be pointing out details. So if we want to fundraise, we need to break down our who. Are we communicating with high net worth individuals? Are we communicating with big companies that have their zakat funds, for example, or their social impact funds? Are we communicating with individuals that can actually donate on a monthly basis? Or are we communicating to universities? Is it schools? What is it exactly who is it exactly that we're communicating? Once you know your who, you'll be able to understand how to personalize your communication based on your target audience. And then obviously the last but not least element is the call to action. The worst thing that you can do is to communicate a message or raising awareness on a certain project, but not giving the audience a call to action or at the end of the day, somewhere to go, a venue to reach out to or an outlet to reach out to. So if you have a fundraising campaign and you're raising awareness about a certain cause or a certain humanitarian crisis, you need to catch the target audience emotions and attention, but you also need to drive them to the right outlet in order to vent those emotions into action. Now, let's define the call to action. In the end, let's define your why, your who, your where, and your how. And in the end, all of them together come to one specific cycle, which is the call to action. In the end, this is the result that you conclude your communication with. So your why could be a problem, a challenge. You are pain points, gain points, a motive, a vision, or just simply a personal experience. That's your why. For example, if you're passionate about saving pets off the street, or if you're passionate about feeding children and making sure that they are not, that they don't suffer from malnutrition going to school, then this would be your why. Now, your who is your target audience, like we said, but there is more to that. You need to define the age group. You need to define the behavior. You need to define the demographics, the age, the gender. You need to develop a certain understanding of how to understand your audience. And you need to personalize your approach. This is very important, to personalize your approach in order to reach their mind, but also to reach their heart. Now, where is also important because this is related to your why. So where is it? The scope, the context, the location, the demographic reach, the element focus, perhaps the Sustainable Development Goals theme. So it could be that we have 17 Sustainable Development Goals. You would like to focus on a certain goal, one or two, and this will come back to the where you're going to say, okay, I would like to focus on goal number 4, which is education, quality education, and I believe that in Egypt and in Lebanon we need more access to quality education. So it will really help you to see where you want to start your campaign or call to action, and then you start small. Then you increasingly slowly. The how is also very important. What action steps need to be taken? So you need to leave your target audience with the how. So how are they going to be engaged? Identify your stakeholders, partnerships, support, team roles, and specialization. So how are you going to reach your target audience? You need to call on everyone. Are you going to communicate this on ground by filling out surveys and talking to people face to face? Or is it going to be a digital campaign, a social media campaign? Or is this going to be on screen, perhaps with some TV channels? And or is this going to be by email? Are you communicating by email? Or is it going to be a 360 campaign whereas you launched a communication 360? So you're on ground telling people at schools, at universities, on the streets, but you're also showcasing it on social media, you partner with TV channels and on-screen outlets, but at the same time you have some phone calls, perhaps maybe organize some events. and so on. Okay, sorry everyone, I got disconnected for a couple of seconds. Now, every business has to at least have 3 target audiences. Basically, it's people, it's customers, it's prospects. And I'm going to take you through those in detail. Now, who are the people? They are the staff, the trainers, and affiliates. Communicating with the people needs to be clear, concise, and informative. All right, so here I want to talk a little bit about the power of effective emails, and this is coming from a little bit of experience. As a private sector, we work with a lot of nonprofit organizations and organizations that really, come out to us for campaigns, for partnerships, for to push their campaigns, to support them, to empower them, to communicate their message, and so on. And sometimes we receive, or most of the time we receive emails introducing this organization and their message and their vision to our MBC team. Most of the time, those emails are way too long, when in fact, all that we need to do is just basically a small introduction, give us 1 paragraph, very simple, very concise, on your mission, and why are you contacting us, and how can we help. So basically, you tell us your purpose, and your audience. And use the 1 thing rule. Emails are not the same as business meetings. So you cannot use the email as a way of communicating another project, or break it down into, honestly, break it down into bullet points. It's the best thing. Sending an article form in an email of 2 pages, you will lose us in no time. If I open my email and I find an email introduction coming from an organization that needs our partnership, or is that basically introducing themselves to us, and it's a 2-pager or a 3-pager, most of the time I will not read it. So try to be concise, to the point. Perhaps ask for a meeting, perhaps even attach a certain presentation or a deck that speaks about your organization, that tells us more, and then leave us with a little bit of a call to action in the end. What do you need from us? How can we help you? Don't leave this call to us, because at the end of the day, I'll come back to you and say, okay, what do you need? What do you need from MBC, and how can we help? So make sure that the people that you're targeting, the companies that you're targeting, the organizations that you're targeting, know that they are being approached by, 10 or 20 organizations a day, or sometimes a week. And how can you stand out in an email and catch their attention is by being very concise, very focused, and to the point, leaving them with exactly what you need. Now, who are the customers? They are the graduates, the students, the employers, the alumni. For us, we're communicating with the customers needs to be thought-provoking, aims to move customers to action. Now, here we're talking, for example, for us, we look at graduates, we look at students, we look at employers, and we look at alumni, because we need to talk to the youth. And for us, this is all about the youth. So, for example, if you are an organization like Education for Employment, and you work with different stakeholders, you need to know your customers. These are your customers, and these are your different stakeholders. So here it varies from one organization to the other. I believe that we have someone from the American School of Dubai on the webinar. So this could be very relevant to you. You need to look at your alumni in order to spread the awareness, but you also need to look at your students, you need to look at your employers, and perhaps even your customers outside, which are the parents, your stakeholders externally, and so on. So again, at the end of the day, it really depends on your business and what you're trying to achieve. Remember to look at who are your customers. Let me take us back to, let's move forward to combine social media and email marketing. So when we were talking about the ways of interacting and communicating effectively, we need to combine social media with email marketing. And I'll give you one example here. It's the Dubai Cares Walkathon, Walk for Education 2019 initiative. They sent out pre-event emails. So they sent out emails to all their database with a call to action. They posted on social media announcements following sending that email across the different social media platforms. During the event, they posted several posts in different formats, blog posts, microsite announcement, podcasts, videos about the initiative, talking to several contestants, runners, and so participants, and so on. So trying to create a buzz during the event. And finally, post the event, they communicated back by sending emails thanking everyone for coming. And even if you hadn't attended that event or the walkathon, sending the email thanking you or sending the email letting you know about the impact, it will make you think twice by looking at pictures and seeing the impact to say, oh, I saw this time, maybe I should consider next time, I'll put it on my calendar. They shared the event highlights across social media as well. And this created a very low budget and low cost communication, but very effective. Here I want to play a video, but I'm not really sure how will that play. Can someone give me a hand from the IT? Here I want to show a different way of communicating, which is a promo on TV. So this is another way of communicating a certain campaign, catching the audience emotions and heart, but also my attention, giving them enough information to get their attention, but at the same time leaving them in the end with all right, so we won't be able to play the video throughout the webinar, but you will have the presentation, and perhaps we can share with you the promo aspect. It's just to show you that sometimes just a promo without words and without anyone talking, silent promo actually can move minds and hearts towards a certain action. Now, why do we need to communicate on social media? Communicating the brand by their own people gives it a different, genuine look and feel, aiming to attract new audience. It's very important to communicate on social media. All right. Okay, I am getting a bit too lost with the, okay. How to write the right caption on social media? Because sometimes on social media, we see so many things that are communicating, but not effectively and not focused. And you somehow get lost in the caption, for example. And a lot of people tell us, if you can just share the caption with us, can you please write us what we need to communicate, even coming from public figures and celebrities. Sometimes they don't know how to write their own caption. These are just a few rules to write engaging captions. Rule number one, give your followers a reason to respond. Rule number 2, connect with your audience by telling stories. And rule number 3, have a clear intention of what you want to talk about. So again, this would take you back to what I was saying before at the beginning, when knowing your why, knowing your who, your context, your target audience, and your call to action. So rule number 1, just to give you an example, give your followers a reason to respond. So give them an engaging question, give them an idea, give them something to think about, yeah, and perhaps open the door to a world where you can actually have engaging audience on your social media platform, because it's not enough to have followers. You can have 100,000 followers, but if you have close to 3% engagement of those 100,000 followers, you have failed, even as an influencer. So make sure that even if you have 1,000 followers on your social media platforms and you have around 100 to 200 comments per post, then honestly, you have a lot of engagement. Rule number 2, connect with your audience by telling stories. Now here, this is very, very important, because sometimes we write captions on social media that are not real, that do not speak to us as individuals. So perhaps the next time you want to talk about quality education, or you want to talk about gender equality, or you want to talk about global impact or global warming and the environmental impact that's happening around us, or sustainable cities, or peace and security, or partnerships, perhaps share a story. And perhaps that story should be either in a 30-second video by a real person on ground that is affected by that issue, or spoken out of the mouth of a young child, or spoken from someone who is actually genuine and passionate about that certain cause. And it could be also a celebrity. You need to carefully choose your own celebrities and public figures to be associated with your captions, associated with your project, because you need to make sure that that person mirrors your cause and mirrors your goals and mission, and do not actually, instead of adding positivity to your social media campaign, you will actually add harm. The rule number 3 is have a clear intention of what you want to talk about. So we have an example here in Arabic. You can read it later. But really, just make sure that you know exactly what you want to talk about, and you don't get confused, or you don't get carried away with too many things. And something here that we haven't really added to the 3 rules, but use a lot of hashtags that would attract audience to your social media caption. Hashtags that have more than 300 or 400K of people following. And make sure that also you dig deep with your social media team, or if you don't have a social media team, with the experts around you that you call on for advice, is that to make sure that the demographics of those followers match the demographics of the locations that you want to hit on. For example, if your target audience sits in Mozambique and Rwanda, you don't want to be engaging everyone that is in Saudi and Egypt. So you really need to be very focused. And that's actually what paid media campaigns do. But as nonprofits, you do not have that kind of budget. And if you do, you would be better off putting that budget into actually serving the people that you're trying to serve. So these are just very small tactics that you can use free of charge. Now, Expand Your Horizon campaign with Injaz Al Arab is a simple way of saying youth to youth walk the talk, basically. It's a campaign that we launched with Injaz Al Arab, and there is another promo here. حصل لي فرصة إني أزور واحدة من. This is really something that we launched 3 years ago, and we continued to talk about it. It was raising awareness on the rising industries in the next 10 years and where the jobs will be. So we were targeting high school students that are about to enter college. in order to be able to give them a little bit of insightful information and details on where the jobs will be in 10 years. So they don't go major in something that might necessarily not be around in 10 years, or they might not find jobs in 10 years. It was a really great 360 campaign because it was a promo on TV that gave them call to action on the website. From the website, they were able to apply for internships. We selected the people from the website and we gave them an internship with different industries and different players and stakeholders within the private sector in different countries, where they were able to actually try out those industries and see if they fit or not. Some people think that they might want to be in media, they might want to be on TV, but when they actually try it, they say, oh, no, that's not really for me. I don't want to be on screen. I want to be behind the scene. I want to be able to be the person who directs or produces this program, but not necessarily the one who is actually presenting it. So really, encouraging the youth to take different internships prepares them well for the job market. And that's what we always say when we visit high schools and universities. We always encourage them to start early. Do not start when you're about to graduate and you want to nail a job. So let me just take a 2-month internship right before I graduate. I can put it on my CV and it would look nice. But we constantly communicate that you need to start and you need to start early. Now, the results of the campaign, just to give you an idea, we received over 11,500 applications, awareness of the brands and the missions around across the MENA region. We launched the campaign on 2016 and 2018. We had a learning journey of 50,000 people in the website. We had around 250,000 interactions on social media. And really, it was the birth of something we call Voices of Hope. Voices of Hope is the TEDx, our own version of TEDx for young youth to learn more about the industries. We realized that there's so many misperceptions on different industries such as media, hospitality, aviation, academia, and so on. The young students didn't know the jobs that were available in those industries, and they had a little bit of perhaps a stereotypical approach or perception or a wrong perception. And we thought, okay, so let's go out there and talk to them more. So we created something called Voices of Hope, which is a roadshow where we take on board different successful stories in different industries, and they share their stories with the students, encouraging them to start early, encouraging them to start young, encouraging them to start small, because we want to tell the students out there that you don't need to start as a manager. You need to start on a very, 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 very junior, and you work your way up, because there is hope on the ladder to success. But you need to start humble, because I'm sure a lot of the students that you meet, and I know that even our kids are aspiring to be millionaires by the time they're 18 because of all the social media campaigns and the social media influencers that keep feeding their minds with insane motives and insane outcomes that most of the time are not true and unreal. Who are the prospects? They are the donors, the potential partners, the media, the board members, the supporters, the friends of the brand. So these are, if I'm not mistaken, these are mostly the people that you prospectively want to target as a non-profit organization. Communicating with those prospects to know about the brand's mission through the art of storytelling is very important. So I'll give you an example. Go and speak to a high net worth person who's very, very, very busy and their time is money, basically. Instead of giving them a long presentation full of details, you can just show a video. And that video really needs to have a lot of stories that are successful. People who have started with you on their program, on your program, and eventually moved up and graduated and became successful in their jobs. So if you're focusing on unemployment and finding solutions for unemployment rates within the youth in the Middle East, you showcase someone who graduated from a university, who couldn't be employed, who couldn't find a job, but finally found an organization that prepared them through capacity building and learnings and lots of workshops, and eventually were able to sharpen their skills in order to prepare them for a job market and in fact help them nail a job. So these are the type of stories that you need to use, and real people, less models. It gives a sense of genuine and credibility. Now, why storytelling? And this is very, very, very important. Storytelling captures the hearts of millions. It's one thing reading about a story, and it's another actually seeing a real story in front of you. So how does storytelling affect the brain? And let's go through a little bit of science. At first, there is something called neural coupling, which is a story activates parts in the brain that allows the listener to turn the story into their own ideas and experience, thanks to a process called neural coupling. So apparently, this hits us in a way that we start imagining us in that certain situation. Have you ever seen a movie where you would really be indulged in the story, or a certain character speaks to you and you start living that role throughout the movie? Or perhaps when you're reading a book and you get really attached to a character that touches your heart and soul and makes you feel like you really connect with that story. Now, mirroring is the other, Mirroring is the other approach that happens, or the next step that happens. The listeners will not only experience the similar brain activity to each other, but will also to the speaker. So you start mirroring that character. You start really looking to that character and seeing yourself in it. Or perhaps not only seeing yourself in it, but also starting to take on some action or some traits from the character. Dopamine is what? The brain releases dopamine into the system when it experiences an emotionally charged event, making it easier to remember and with greater accuracy. So here we start really emotionally getting attached to the event or attached to the story. And eventually, an activity where you're processing facts, two areas of the brain are activated. An well-told story can engage many additional areas, including the motor cortex, sensory cortex, and frontal cortex. These are all very scientific terminologies and scientific approaches. But let me tell you one thing. When you see a video, 30 seconds, 1 minute, of a child that is alone, that's crying, that's cold, hungry, and in the end, how do you feel? You will feel extremely emotionally attached to that child. You will feel sad. Perhaps you will cry if you are me, because I tear a lot connecting to these stories, and you will want to stand up and do something about it. Over the years, since we started working on MBC Hope, we realized one thing. There is a lot of news out there that's bad news. And it has created a lot of emotional fatigue for the audience. When nowadays, and for maybe 10 years ago, or even throughout the history of time, with wars and conflicts and people dying and natural disasters and so on, when you turn on the news and all you see is bad news, you become not only depressed, you become very cynical. You become emotionally detached. And what we call nowadays is there is an emotional fatigue to those stories. You start seeing numbers. You no longer see human beings. So we have done a lot of research when it came to thousands of people being killed in Syria. Refugees are all over, unaccompanied minors. You only start hearing numbers and you don't see human beings. And what happens here is that you start disconnecting. So no matter what's going to be told to you, you won't care. And eventually you will change the channel. We have learned that if we connect one story that represents a certain sector or a certain segment of society, you will get heard, and you will get the right listeners, and you will get the right viewers, and you will get the right empathetic audience that will empathize with you, but also take action and start thinking of how can they help. I'll give you an example. There was a campaign that we launched in 2014, and I'll tell you about it now. But why are you telling your story? Before I tell you about the campaign, consider your goals and your audience together. Don't just think about who you want to target. Think about how you want to influence them. Consider where they are at and where you want them to be. So this is where we started looking. This is when we started looking at where we are at, which is audience disconnected, audience changing the channel, audience not wanting to hear about sad stories. They want to watch comedy. They want to watch hopeful stories. They don't want sad campaigns. And where we wanted to be. Where did we want to be? We wanted to recapture their attention. We wanted to recapture their hearts, but also their minds. And to make sure that we give them a message of hope, but also give them a message of action, that everyone has a role to play. So choose one or three levels that you want to affect. Is it awareness? Is it you want to change attitude or behavior? Now, creating awareness. Your audience doesn't know about your issue or your organization. It's not on the radar. So they don't care yet. You want them to become aware that a problem or a solution exists. So that's one. Then not only do you want them to care, but also you want to change perceptions. You want to change mindsets. You want to change attitudes. So first you want to capture their attention by creating the awareness. So, okay, eventually now they know you. Now you want to change their attitude. So if you go up to someone and say, hey, I am from cancer patients of friends of cancer patients, and I want to talk to you about my organization. No, I'm not really there. No, but we help patients understand the treatments, and we help patients go through it fluently, but also give them support systems and so on. Now here you created awareness, but again, you want to change the attitude. So you tell them, why is it important? And then you influence their behavior, which is basically how do you get them on board? Your audience is already on your side. This is when you reach a point where, fine, you gave them the awareness, you're changing their attitude, but you want them to take a specific action, to get involved, then become an advocate, or change their habits. So here you hit on the three targets of telling your story. Now, when we realized that this is very important, we started playing on that. So we launched something called Busmans MS. Busmans MS is 2 seasons of 45 stories on refugees. And here the stories are not selective. Here the stories are not of millions. The stories are of individuals. So we started targeting individual stories that speak to the mind and the heart of the region. The story of a child, the story of an older person, the story of a single mother that is raising her kids alone, that has lost her husband on the way, the story of unaccompanied minors who have fled their country for safety alone and lost all of their family members. Stories of a young man who is 18 and suddenly found himself in a refugee camp and do not know what the future holds for him. A story about a young woman who aspires to become the next STEM engineer but doesn't know how to get there. These stories really touch the lives of viewers. And we were able to launch 2 seasons of Busmans ML program. It was a show on MBC One during Ramadan with UNHCR to capture real stories from the refugee camps. And we were able to raise $0.5 million for refugees and by refugees, because it was really by refugees. Yes, we produced the program. We were the ones who directed the program. We were the ones who aired the program and planned for it and organized it. But they were the ones who were brave enough to stand in front of that camera and tell their story, and to be able to reveal to everyone in the region, over 200 million viewers during Ramadan, the busiest season of our TV, to share their vulnerability and their truth. Another campaign that was very effective and productive was Share the Meal with World Food Program. Share the Meal is an app where you can easily connect to this app and share a meal with either a family or an individual or a child in different locations, not only in the region, but in the world. So we, 2 years ago, not last Ramadan, the Ramadan before, we launched a campaign called Share the Meal. And the campaign was on screen, on social media, but also on ground. We went around and we shared the story of Share the Meal app. We educated on ground different people from different audiences, students, young and old, organizations, nonprofit, private sector, academia, TV, content creators. Everybody came around to talk about Share the Meal and how easy and effective it is. Honestly, it was very simple to explain to everyone how you can easily contribute to WFP, and you can easily contribute to ending hunger by downloading the app. And if you go to the supermarket and you buy the delicious dessert that you like, or the ice cream that the kids like, or the food that you really enjoy together on your family every night, it is also nice to share the meal. So you go on your app and you encourage your your youngsters at home, or your neighbors or your mates at school to raise awareness on it and say, hey, now that we have shopped for our favorite, how about we share a meal with someone? The beauty of this app is that it connects you with that individual or that family. So it gives you options where, so demographically, you would choose, and then you would choose the family, and you would choose even the amount. You could buy a single meal, or you could share a long 1 month meal, or you can share meals for the entire year. And believe me, it's a beautiful way of engaging the community on giving back, and it's the easiest way possible. You don't leave the country. You don't need to go visit any community centers or any refugee camps. You just need to download the app, put your credit card details, and teach your youngsters and your children and your neighbors on how to effectively add value and impact to the community. These are just, basically stories. This is an example of what you would get when you visit the app. So you would get 7-year-old Amin lives in Sana'a with his parents and brothers, and you would get the story. Or you would say your shared meals helped Sandra buy cheese, dates, canned fish, and labna for her family of 4 in Syria. You see how beautiful this is and how well it was done, because it's not about a donation box that you put your pennies or you put your change in. It actually connected you with the person or the family that you just shared a meal with. And it makes you feel connected, even through an app. It makes you feel not only fulfilled, but also happy knowing where the money went. Another campaign that I absolutely love is Toms. I love their shoes. They're super comfortable. They're so cool. But also, it leaves me happy leaving that shop. Not only that I buy a new pair of shoes that I can, love walking in anywhere I go, or if I gifted someone else with a shoe, but also I made sure that I contributed to a child who is shoeless, who is basically barefoot somewhere else. And this is a brand that is extremely well communicated, because everything that they do is say 1 for 1. This is it. They don't do advertising below the line, above the line. They don't do any of that. They're basically a website. They have a website, and they have messages in their shops saying, if you buy one, we donate one. And now they have added more. They have added the sunglasses option, where if you buy one pair of glasses, they donate one pair of eyeglasses to a child in vulnerable areas and in less fortunate areas around the world. Now, this is such a simple but very effective communication campaign, but not only a communication campaign for a private sector, but also a social impact campaign. They actually contribute well, but also engage their customers and engage their audience. I just love to tell their stories. Running a business with a noble cause is good, but does it mean you should run it like a charity? No. This is the message that I always try to give our nonprofit partners. And every time I have the opportunity to conduct this workshop, I basically say, if you are a nonprofit organization, you need to think like a business. You need to be scalable. You need to be sustainable. You can no longer rely only on donations, because donations are becoming scarce. They're becoming dissolving very easily. You need to be financially stable. You need to find ways, outlets where you can make certain profits in order to feed within your business. Because if you don't look at your organization as a business, eventually, I'm sorry to tell you, you're going to run out of money and you're going to close your organization. And the ones that are going to suffer the most are the people whom you are serving. Excuse me. The model is evolving. We need to function as a business. Excuse me. So, 6 effective ways to operate a nonprofit like a social enterprise. So now we talked about the communication and the effective mechanisms of communicating your product, because your cause is your product. You have to think about it this way. You cannot look at your cause as just a cause. You have to look at it as a product, and you have to start thinking like a salesperson and a business development person in order to operate effectively. Okay, so non-profits is a tax status. Fundraising and meeting budget are vital. Speak the same language. Act, speak, and perform like a business. Set actionable KPIs and targets. Select your most important KPI and determine the 5-year plan target for the KPI. Focus on the ROI. What is your return on investment? Target and analyze your strategy and tactics based on your ROI. What's the return on investment if we put $5 here? Are we going to get 5,000 followers? Are we going to get $5,000 worth of return? Are we going to be able to serve 5,000 youth? If not, then it's not worth it. Make the mission itself profitable. How? Use your positioning to ensure sustainability and reduce philanthropy dependence. You really need to look at that, because if you look at your nonprofit like a social enterprise, believe me, you're going to run out of time. A lot of the nonprofits nowadays are joining hands with other social enterprises or rolling out their own social enterprise. So whether you are in educating for employment, you can roll out your capacity building paid programs to people who can actually afford it. And from there, you can make sure that you put those profits in a certain bond or a certain bank account that will generate savings for you, or reinvest it in another project that will bring you more profit. And that way you are sustainable. That way you are independent financially. You do not run on fundraising campaigns and donations campaigns. What if that fund that you're relying on after 7 years doesn't get renewed? What are you going to do? Are you going to let go of all your employees? Are you going to tell the people that you serve that you can no longer provide that service for them? You must think now as a business and less of a charity. Last but not least, use data to make decisions. Incorporate metrics to measure social impact, performance management, and financials. And this is something that I can't get into now because this is not really the main aim of my workshop, but this is something that I like to always leave. It's a thought that I like to always leave the nonprofits with. Eventually, if you're interested to know more about this, you can contact me through Pearl Initiative or through my personal contact. But honestly speaking, I have helped some organizations, nonprofit organizations, roll out their social enterprise, and they really feel grateful that they started thinking about that at an early age. And they understand now the importance of a business. Because I'll tell you what, if you're approaching a business, a private sector company, for investing in your nonprofit or investing in your nonprofit programs and campaigns, you need to think like them. So you need to put your business hat on, because they will ask you about numbers. They will ask you about return on investment. They will ask you about it for them. So you need to have those answers ready. And some private sector care about more of the impact rather than the communication, or rather than the PR and marketing campaign where it makes them look good. We care about the impact. So when you come to us, you need to tell us, this is the campaign, and this is how many people you will touch live, and this is the number that you will change perceptions with, and these are the number of youth that you will be able to help. Now, how to make your storytelling so compelling? Did you see what I did there? I played on poetry a little bit. Localize your content. Make it very, very local. If you're talking about a story in the UAE, talk about a story in the UAE. Don't get a story from the US. If you're talking to Jordanians, talk from Jordanian to Jordanian. Or if it's a regional, make it pan-Arab. But really try as much as you can to localize your content. In the sense of, if you're going to a Saudi company asking for funds, don't get them something that they will not relate to. Like, don't give them a story from Mexico. Get them a story from the region. Get them a story from CC. Even get them a story from Saudi. But make sure that you get them a story that they will emotionally connect with, and culturally connect with, and demographically and geographically will connect with. 2, keeping it real. Find real stories for real connections. Do not fake it. It's very important to find that real story, even if it's one story, 30 seconds, but it needs to be real. 3rd, visuals speak louder than words. Create the emotional connection. Show them a video. Don't read them a story. Tell them this is a story and click on that button. Even if it's low quality production video, but if it's somebody who's real, on a real location, talking about real things with a real background, believe me, it will make that person that you're trying to connect with, that you're trying to get their attention, their connection, and their money eventually, or their investments. It will make them know, it will actually prove to them that you're someone who's passionate about the cause, but someone who's real. Eventually, in the end, it's all about the heart. So if your heart is not in your cause, you will not be able to convince anyone of your message. So make sure that the message comes from the heart, and make sure that the message emotionally affects the other person's heart. Because even if it's someone who's a CEO sitting on a board of 20 people who are all C-suite, very business-like, in all business suits, if you were able to touch the mother's heart or the father's heart, or speak to the single mom, or speak to the young person who it was hard for them to reach that, to climb up that ladder of success and to get somewhere, who were, only were able to be educated through scholarships and so on. If you speak to their hearts, eventually you will get their attention. And, you know, finally, please connect with us. And thank you very much for listening. I hope I didn't take too much of your time, or I hope I was clear. Thank you, everyone. I'm done with 5 minutes.